policies aimed at addressing the international migration crisis at the southern border and the effect of the Biden administration's decision to terminate those policies. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. In my 20 years in Congress, including when I was chairman of the Homeland Security Committee and as a former federal prosecutor in Texas, tasked with securing our border, I've never seen our border this chaotic. Simply put, the border is broken. What we're witnessing today is unprecedented. In total, since President Biden took office, we've had more than 7.5 million encounters at the southern border. This is the population of 9 states combined. This includes 7,000 special interest aliens and nearly 300 apprehensions of individuals on the terror watch list, compared to 14 under the previous administration. The security risk to our country is real, and our adversaries around the world are capitalizing on our open border policies. It only took 19 terrorists to perpetrate 9/11, as the FBI testified before the Homeland Security Committee just 2 weeks ago. This crisis is a self-inflicted wound and a direct result of this administration's policies. Upon taking office, the Biden administration rescinded the migrant protection protocols, also known as Remain in Mexico. Under MPP, migrants were removed to Mexico while their asylum claims were adjudicated in the United States. Now, without MPP, they are released into the interior under a failed catch and release program. This graph shows the ports of entry in which MPP was instituted. Yet one rescission, one stroke of the pen, ended that. It ended MPP. One of the first days of office is what the Biden administration did, was to rescind this policy that was working. And it allowed the chaos that we see now at the border to reach to historic levels. Now, as someone who's both federal prosecutor, chairman of Homeland, now this committee, every major port of entry was covered under this program. Yet one rescission, one stroke of the pen, ended this successful program and allowed this chaos at the border to reach these levels, historic levels. So in my many meetings with Border Patrol agents at the border, and I've been there many times, they tell me very bluntly, when I say, was there a cause and effect? They say, yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chairman. They tell me very bluntly the rescission of this policy had a direct cause and effect on the chaos at the border. The sad thing is we had the policies that were working. I spent over 25 years on this, and I never thought we would actually see it fixed. The sad thing is we had it fixed, and now it's absolutely devastating. We need to turn off the pull factor, the magnet driving this, that will also shut down the cartels. MPP did that. Under MPP, U.S. apprehensions of migrants at the southwest border fell by 62% from May 2019 to August 2019. Imagine that, a 62% decrease from just May to August in 1 year. That also, importantly, financially crippled and brought to their knees the cartels that were profiting off human trafficking and other illicit activity that we know now they're making upwards of billions of dollars. Additionally, asylum cooperative agreements were integral to stemming the tide of illegal aliens. They required asylum seekers to apply for asylum upon arrival in the first safe country. By allowing aliens to enter the interior of this country freely, we are signaling to them, come on in, we're open for business. The border's wide open. And we all know when they get in, we don't have detention space, and guess what? The very first bill I ever introduced in Congress 20 years ago was to end catch and release. Here we are today, 20 years later, back to the policies that have failed our country and the American people, catch and release. And what will happen to these 7.5 million encounters, many of whom are in this country now with no legal status, living in the shadows? Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. The young girls are going to be sex trafficked. The young males will go to MS-13. They'll be paying the cartels off. They'll be involved in drug trafficking. And we've already seen this. They're going to be forced into gangs and labor rings. Over 2,000 migrants and counting have died trying to make the dangerous journey across the border in the last 3 fiscal years. And 35% are women and children who are sexually abused throughout their journey at the hands of these brutal cartel members. It was just reported that there are rape tents in the Darien Gap that leads into from South America to Mexico. 400 women and children have been brutalized and raped. And again, when they get here, what happens? We see 30 children being sent to the same house. Sponsors, family members sponsoring 30 children to the same house. That cannot be a familial thing. They are brought there for one purpose, for money, for human trafficking, and to exploit them sexually. Sadly, they have not even been vetted in many cases because our secretary, Mr. Mayorkas, lifted those restrictions. This is turning into a major human trafficking event, the biggest I've seen in my lifetime. And it's right here in the United States. And it's only going to get worse if we don't change the policies back to what worked. This administration has created a criminal enterprise right now in the United States of America that will have ramifications for years to come. And tragically, most tragically, over the last 2 years, nearly 150,000 people have died from fentanyl poisoning. You know, I've had 5 children. Just their high school alone, they've been to 5 funerals. 5 funerals. Tell that to the parents. They took what they thought was ADD or Xanax, and they never woke up. That number is nearly triple the number of American deaths due to the entire duration of the entire Vietnam War. And we only expect these deaths to continue, to get worse. I've always said the borders are our last line of defense. So as we look at this national security bill we're working on, and I agree with it, what are the major threats to the United States? Well, there's Putin in Europe, there's Chairman Xi, Pacific, Ayatollah, Middle East, what he's doing right now with Hamas and Israel. And guess what? The last line of defense is our southern border. And we have no defense. I've always said we need to push our borders out. Push the borders out. Stop playing defense 1 yard from our goal line. Push it out to their end zone. And that's what MPP did. That's what Remain in Mexico did. And regrettably, I believe this administration has been derelict in its duty and its responsibility to protect the American people. Put simply, the President and Secretary Mayorkas are aiding and abetting this crisis at our southern border, and I told them so at our hearing at the Homeland Security Committee. Aiding and abetting under the federal statute, human trafficking, hundreds of thousands of deaths, fentanyl poisoning. As I said, I've been dealing with this issue for almost 3 decades. I thought we had it solved. I really did. And I could go home finally to my constituents and say, you know what? We got it done. Well, guess what? This administration, by abandoning the policies that worked, have royally messed it up. And am I a little emotional about this? You're darn right. When I go home to Texas and I talk to my constituents, they are angry, and I am their only voice up here. but my voice reflects their voice of their anger about what is happening. My state has been borne the brunt of this. Billions of dollars of cost to the people of the state of Texas, and my state legislature appropriating all this money when it's really a federal responsibility. I think it's well past time to get back to what worked. I don't care. I told my organization, I don't care what you call this. I know you're doing this because there's a prior administration, but you know what worked? Call it what you want, but let's get back to what works for the sake of the American people. I hope that in this national security package we're working on, we finally have a chance to get border security back front and center, and I hope that we can get it done. I've talked to the ranking member. He's open. I've talked to the Secretary of State. I believe that they are finally opening their eyes to maybe getting back to what worked, so well. But as Reagan said, trust but verify. We'll see. We will see. Elections have consequences. This one had a really grave consequence. And I believe that if we don't get this thing back on track, we're going to have another consequence in the next election, because the American people are fed up with this. They're sick and tired of having a border that is not secure. And it is within the jurisdiction of this committee. While Homeland that I chaired had many, this committee has jurisdiction over the principle that worked the greatest, and that is the migrant protection protocols and remain in Mexico. That's why we marked that up out of this committee. We passed it out of committee, and we put that provision in H.R. 2, which was the House Republicans' border security bill that now we are trying to get on the national security aid package. As I talked to the senators on the other side of this Congress to work to get this in, and when I talked to them, please put this provision in, because this is the driving thing. This is the thing that really made the difference. We can put up all the stuff we want down there and barbed wire and all that stuff, but if we don't change the asylum policies like this, we're not going to get to the root cause of the problem. So, I want to thank the witnesses for being here today, particularly Gene Hamilton, who, if y'all don't know, was the architect of this program. He worked at Department of Homeland Security, and then he worked at DOJ, where I worked for many years. Chad Wolf, as y'all know, is a former Secretary of Homeland Security, implemented this policy. And Adam, sir, thank you for being here to give I appreciate the human rights perspective here. And we have some ideas as how to deal with that as well. I know the tent cities was an issue, but I think detention space, adequate, that's humane, is one consideration we should be looking at. So anyway, I want to thank the members for being here for this. I hope we have a vigorous debate on this and an honest debate about what's best for the American people. And again, I want to thank the witnesses. And I would normally turn to the ranking member. He's on the floor with my $6 billion being sanctioned from going into Iran. He's a little busy right now. But with that, I will now turn to the witnesses for their testimony. And when Mr. Meek shows up, we'll give him a moment to give an opening statement. But Mr. Chad Wolf is forming Acting Secretary of Homeland, currently serving as Executive Director, Chief Strategy Officer, and Chair of America First Policy Institute. Mr. Gene Hamilton served as counselor